welcome to New York. And, you know, when you gave this, when did you give it serious consideration that you really thought about making the move back here to the Knicks?
I guess it would be in January. I met with Jim Dolan middle of December. Things had not gone well with the Knicks, and he was a little frustrated with the team. And we were at a party together, and we had a chance to step aside and talk for a while. And we met again the next day and talked a little bit. He gave me some of the things that he had as far as plans, ideas. Asked me to come over and come back and talk to him about it. Then, following the New Year's, we had another opportunity to speak, and at that particular time, there was a deep commitment on his part to go forward on this. And so I did think about it, and I came back to him with an affirmative that let's progress and see how it goes in our talks.
How much of this, now obviously there's many considerations, financial and everything else, but how much of this is because of the Knicks? How much of it has to do with your history, going back to your playing days, going back to Red Holtzman? Is that a big part of this?
Undoubtedly. There have been other teams that have talked and have asked and I've, considered I've talked to some teams. I've actually been advisor to some people. So, yeah, I've been in the mix a little bit, but stayed away from going full-time. I just didn't feel I was ready to make a commitment like that. This is different. This is a different scenario for me because it's familiar. I'm familiar with the spot. I'm familiar with the team. I'm familiar with the fans. I lived in the New York area between my career with the Knicks and the Nets and then my CBA career in Albany for 4 years, and the CBA having access to New York and being here a lot, for probably 20 years of my youth. So, yes, I'm familiar with it, and to be honest, I think we always, when we have a team that we've played for, we've had communications and combinations of things that brought championships along, have a special bond for the people that are in that franchise. There's not a whole lot of people left. Clyde's the only one really represents that era. Bill Bradley's still in town. Earl Monroe's still around. Dick Barnett. So there are some guys that are still around here that I remember and have fond remembrance of. But yes, there are people that have been very supportive of becoming this direction beyond basketball.
We're talking about Phil Jackson as he becomes the Knicks president today, 5-year deal to take over the Knicks, and he will be in charge of the basketball operation. Having read 11 Rings, Phil, which I thoroughly enjoyed, can you have a primary impact on the team going forward, or is it going to be a different impact? Is it a secondary impact now as a executive versus what you would have as a coach? How much will the impact change in your regard?
Most direct impact that a team has on its personality, its behaviors, its coach. The desire to implement a working situation, environment that creates the best possible format for players to succeed, coaches to succeed, is done to the executive part of an organization. There was a guy I worked with for a number of years, Jerry Krause,
right,
that said individuals don't win championships, organizations do. Was kind of highly touted in one way, but Jerry kind of expressed, the fact that, an organization puts together the best possible format for teams and players to succeed at. And I think that's really the overall picture that one has to look at from my standpoint now moving into this kind of a role. From developmental players that we now have in this D-League that the Knicks have bought and brought to the New York area, to the Summer League that's going to be, players that are going to be trying out, to just, a roster that's going to be provided for training camp, to actually eventually putting a roster together that represents a team. Those are all things that, fall under an auspices of a executive. The coach has to check off on them and has to, have an affinity for coaching them and a feel for them. But, those things are really directly responsible to a person who sits in the seat I do. And assisting me, of course, will be Steve Mills, who's already has ideas, already has a desire, already has a feel for this, and has some credibility that I don't have in the machinations of the NBA and salary cap structure.
Phil, clearly you had a genius for impacting players, bringing them in, making them, as you would say, bringing them inside the circle, making them part of your tribe, the whole thing, impacting them very directly as coach. Can you have that same impact on the players from your new capacity?
Over the years and watching, Red Auerbach, his style, his impact, turning the team over to Bill Russell at the end of his, keeping Bill involved in basketball and coaching for the last couple of years of his NBA career, moving into the front office and then representing the Celtics in the face of the organization, creating a space for Larry Bird to come back after Havlicek and Cowens and that era group, and realizing they'd have to sit a year to wait for him, but knowing that he was the kind of player that would be the right turn for that team. All of those things, I think, are demonstrations of an impact that an executive has in this game. And recently we've seen it with, Greg Popovich was the general manager in running that San Antonio Spurs organization until they got Tim Duncan. They had Robinson there, David, and he was orchestrating that, took over his coaching, but he still has his hand in that, in really developing the whole overall aspect of what the San Antonio Spurs are. And it's been an organization that's been at the top of the heap for the last 15, 16 years. And, seeing Pat Riley move into management level and, leave coaching behind, about 10 years ago, I think it really demonstrates what can be done from that position, too.
Talking with Phil Jackson as he takes over the Knicks and points them forward. What do you expect from your coach, Phil? Do you have certain things that are requirements? I mean, you're very, very strong on certain principles and certain things you believe in. What will you expect from your coach philosophically?
Well, I expect a coach to, have a methodology. Doesn't have to be my methodology. Doesn't have to be a triangle offense. He has to teach what he knows, and that's important because, those skills that he knows and teaches are important for whatever system he puts in place. But I see a team that with the needs of offensively to run, push the ball, have an active surge down the floor, to create open floor opportunities, to have a secondary break or whatever they call that flow in between transition and, an organization. And then, that offensive system has to be one in which the players know how to get to without, a coach getting off the bench and coming out and calling a play, and then everybody stops and gets in position and the defense gets set. Those are things that I think are prerequisites for how I want to see the game played. I want to see that activity go on continuously, a flow, a movement, a format, and an action that's created with the ball moving from side to side and more cuts than just individual or screen roll action out there on the floor. So I think there's some definite things I'd like to see. Whether that happens or not, a lot of it depends upon coaching. And at this point, Mike's putting together a run at the playoffs. He's, a season which has been hampered by a lot of things, a myriad of things that have kept them, in a situation that's been difficult at best. And right now he's, pushing this team towards the playoff, and that's got to be their focus and their main interest right now.
Phil, everyone will be concerned because the feeling here is that the owner has trouble with lines of really who's in charge, and not only communication, but also as far as who is running things. when you look at the whole of the organization, do you, in the past, now you have different types of owners always, but do you consider the